Sisi letu kwa sasa ni jicho na kujaribu kuangalia kwamba usalama wetu vile vile upo namna gani katika kuhakikisha kwamba watazamaji wetu wanapokea taarifa hizi kwa njia tendeti, njia usawa na kadri matukio yenyewe yanapotokea. Wambua.
Asante sana Brian Obuya. Kama nilivyotaja awali, muhimu zaidi ni kutia makini kwa ajili ya usalama wako mwenyewe, na bila shaka hivyo ni visa ambavyo tunavishuhudia kutoka pale eneo la Mathare. Na Obuya vile vile nadhani kwamba itakuwa ni nafasi nzuri sana kuwapa ushauri kidogo maafisa wa DCI kwamba hizi ni mojawapo wa picha ambazo huenda zikawasaidia sana, wala sio zile ambazo ni za miaka ambayo imepita kuhusiana na maandamano hizo. Tunasema kwamba ni fresh, wanaweza kuzitumia vizuri sana. Hebu tuache hayo kidogo. Obuya, ukizidi kufuatilia taarifa hiyo muda si mrefu tutakuungana nawe wakati ambapo ukipata eneo salama kabisa kuweza kuzungumza nayo kwa kina zaidi kuhusiana na hali ilivyo katika eneo hilo. Lakini kidogo Alex, sitarudi kwako, niruhusu niruke kwa kidogo Viviana. Na Viviana, hizo ni picha nzuri sana ambazo umeziona pale, japo si nzuri katika hali ambayo tunazidi kuhubiri kwamba tuna amani, maandamano tuyafanye amani. Lakini Viviana, unagundua kwamba hizo picha ambazo unaona pale ni za wananchi wakirushia maafisa wa polisi, japo kuwa tunataka kwamba maafisa wa polisi wasirushe vitoza za machozi kwa wananchi, kuwatawanya, pengine kuleta vurugu. Wananchi wenyewe wanarusha wakati tunaona polisi wametulia. Mgala muwe na kiumbe.
We recognize as a sport in the Olympics.
Hatujaona picha yote. Ile section ambayo tumeonyeshwa tu wananchi wakirusha mawe, lakini hapo awali tukianza show niliwaona afisa polisi will come on board and start demanding for their rights. Kwa hivyo let us be recognized because we belong. Jinsi ninavyoona katika runinga inakaa hali inakaa ni hivyo, na pia kwa maoni yangu naona wananchi labda hiyo kurusha mawe ni kuonyesha wamekerwa ama wamegadhabishwa na polisi kuwanyima haki yao ya kuandamana ama kujitokeza kuandamana kwa njia ya amani. Wamewafungia njia. So hiyo kurusha mawe ni kama kuonyesha tu yani wamekerwa ama wanaonyesha yani ghadhabu yao ya kunyimwa hiyo haki ya kujitokeza na kuandamana kwa njia ya amani. Na pia polisi wakirusha hizo vitoa machozi inaonekana wananchi pia wanazichukua, wanawarudishia hizo vitoa machozi na pia wanasindikiza na mawe. Kwa sababu hiyo ndio kitu tu ambao wanayo. Hawana silaha, hawana chochote kingine ambao wanaweza tumia kujikinga wanapoona polisi wakiwakaribia. Kwa hivyo mawe ni kama yani kusisitisha yani polisi wasiwakaribie, kwa sababu wakiwakaribia wanaweza waumiza. Polisi wana silaha ambao wananchi hawana. Kwa maoni yangu hivyo ndio inakaa mambo yako hapo Mathare.
Nitakuwa narudi kwa muda si mrefu kisha nizungumze na Kariara, lakini Alex, unazungumzaje hiyo hoja wakati ukimaliza hoja yako ya awali?
Hiyo ni kitu cha kusikitisha sana kwamba kwanza kwa watu waazimiwe wanavyosema kwamba hiyo ni wanaandamana kiamani. Hakuna amani chochote hapo. Ukiangalia sheria vile ninavyosema, na ni vizuri bwana Okango Vivian na pia ndugu yangu wamesema ukweli kwamba kipengele cha 37 cha katiba kinakubali watu waandamane, lakini waandamane na amani na pia wasikuwe na silaha. Lakini pia ukiangalia the operations ya hiyo kipengele, tuangalie section 5 of the Public Order Act ambayo inaeleza kwamba ni vipi ambavyo mtu ambaye anataka kuandamana atahusisha idara ya polisi. Kuna ile notisi na kila kitu ambayo walifanya. Maandamano ya Jumatatu iliyopita, polisi walisema kuwa haikuzingatia ile time frame ambayo imekuwa provided for in the Public Order Act, ambayo ni ukweli kwamba within 3 days ama more than 14 days unaweza pia kupatia polisi ile notice. Hawakuweza kuwapatia ile notice, lakini walienda wapi? Kuandamana. Na sheria imesema kwamba lazima wazingatie hiyo notice. Kwa hivyo hiyo maandamano ya Monday ilikuwa unlawful assembly. Ya leo walipeana notice vizuri, wakaambiwa kwamba na ule mkuu wa Nairobi kwamba peana kwa OCS wote ambayo pale mtakuwa mnaenda. Sijui kama walifanya hivyo ama hawakufanya. Jana mkuu wa polisi IG
His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of Uganda, for having taken that bold step. And I have heard that even Uganda, after he has just assented to that law, they got a very heavy downpour, a very heavy rainfall. Even for us in Kenya, I believe, as a Muslim, the many problems and challenges we are facing on this earth is because of such kind of vices which the West intend now to put into our midst. It is time we don't sit on the fence, we don't bury our heads in the sand, we come forward and challenge this vice that wants to be brought to our youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Karoli Omondi, MP for Suba South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And for the record, night running is one of the indigenous sports. Mr. Speaker, I rise to add my voice to this motion, and I would like to begin by stating that I firmly believe in the natural order of things, and that, like magnetism, opposites attract. And I also appreciate the genius of God in creating the instruments of affection and attraction between people of different gender and making them to have universal application and standards, if you know what I mean. But Mr. Speaker, life has its own complications and contradictions. So does nature. If you remember the very smart people who drafted the American Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and the rest of them, they say that all men are created equal and each is endowed with certain inalienable rights, amongst them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet these men, with such elevated ideas and statements, owned slaves. There are many contradictions in the way human beings live and conduct themselves. So is in nature. This thing, I mean, the topic we are talking about, LGBTQ, if you look at those particular abbreviations, some of them present very complicated medical conditions. For example, transgender, where someone's gender identity is very different from what is typically known to humanity. Or intersex, where really one is endowed by both sexual organs. It is easy when you talk about lesbians, where a woman is attracted to another female, or gay, where one is attracted to people of the same gender, or one is bisexual, or is queer. Or queer is where the gender is fairly fluid. Or there's a new one, questioning, where nobody is still not quite clear what their gender identity is. Or even where one is asexual, where there's no sexual attraction. Mr. Speaker, these things present very complex issues that I see a lot of passion and I see a lot of interest in this matter. But I would like to urge tolerance. We all remember one famous man called Galileo Galilei, who discovered that the Earth actually orbits around the sun, and the sun is always at its meridian. The Catholic Church called this heresy and sentenced him to life imprisonment, and he died in prison. That was called intolerance. Mr. Speaker, Pope Francis, on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, which is this year, uttered the following words, and I'm a Catholic, and I profess that faith. Criminalizing homosexuality is unjust. God loves all his children just as they are. Being homosexual is not a crime. Mr. Speaker, while I understand and agree that this is not part of our culture, and this is behavior that we should not support, I completely do not agree that we should exercise or show discrimination against LGBTQ on the basis of their sexual choices and orientation. As Africans, we have experienced discrimination on the basis of race.
Honorable Karoli Omondi, I'll add you a few seconds.
Yes.
But did the Pope read section 162 to 165 of Kenya's Penal Code?
Or
the Pope said homosexuality is not a crime in which country?
Mr. Speaker, 67 jurisdictions around the world have criminalized homosexuality. So Kenya is one of them. The Pope is aware of that. After all, much of your law is part of canon law as developed by the Catholic Church. But what I do not agree with is discrimination based on something that is a personal choice. Mr. Speaker, I would urge that we don't, as much as we discourage this behavior, much of our effort should be in education, better family values, better family lifestyles, better family engagement, and not engage in invasion of privacy as you currently see. I also wonder why sometimes the LGBTQ exhibit themselves. I think the best policy would be don't ask, don't tell. I would really urge caution that there should be no profiling of people because of their gender, sexual choices, or denial of services or isolation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Karoli. Is Honorable Gichimu Gidinji, the MP for Gichugu, in the House? Not in the House. Let us have Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, the MP for Kwanza.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the chance. And I wish my friend, the previous speaker, I didn't even want to listen to him, but he has a right to speak in this House. The only thing is that, please, I hope you are an African. And I'm upset, Mr. Speaker, nothing personal, but let me make my point here. That somebody says is right. And I just want to find out, the Supreme Court sat, and somebody I think mentioned here, I think that sitting should be in vain. We should not even talk about it. I don't even know how I'm going to talk about, when I see that in the newspaper, I normally remove that page and throw it away because my children may just read what is actually being written there. And I don't like that because I'm an African. Please, we are Africans. We are not going to be here importing cultures that don't even make value. There's African culture, there's a European culture, but now how do we know the whole, and I think, I'm not a lawyer myself, I'm an economist. I want to be told by the lawyers in this House that the Supreme Court judges are Africans. And I think there's something they missed. And therefore, for us to be sitting here to discuss about this, it's an abuse of the culture, which has brought me to where I am today. And for heaven's sake, this should not even waste our time here. And I want the lawyers in this country, in this House, because we make laws for the prosperity of this country. We are not just going to take something because a white man has said that this is good there. For heaven's sake, Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity and condemn that ruling by the Supreme Court because these are Africans, and I want to ask whoever she is, the Supreme Court judge is here, I hope she's listening to us, she follows this, that was wrong. It was just because she wanted to pass time and not have you and get her salary, that's different. There are more important issues than that. So, like sodomy, for example, in my culture, is criminal. You don't expect somebody to sleep with another man. There are beautiful girls out there and women. How would you go and sleep and persuade a fellow man? And then you say it is illegal? My good God, please save me from this. I want to take this opportunity and ask the lawyers in this country to condemn that, and that discussion, that meeting that they had is just in vain, and I want us to discuss other things. I wish, Mr. Speaker, that I'm the last person here and we talk other business, because that is unheard of. We know that happens in Europe. We have been in Europe, we have been to Asia, we have been to whatever, but that kind of behavior, even in Europe, whoever is saying is right, is not right. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not want us to talk about it because that's importation of culture. Africans are proud of having their own culture. And for us to have this in this country, Mr. Speaker, please spare this country, spare Kenya. I'm part of Kenyans, and I do not want to hear this kind of thing. And I hope that I'm going to be the last speaker on this because we have better business in this house to discuss, and discussing about things that cannot even make sense at all. And I want to take this opportunity to ask His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency, please rule this out of order, rule this out, so that talk about it. Uganda has talked about it, and we're expecting you as a Christian. You are a Christian. Your Excellency, condemn this, outlaw this. We don't want to have a discussion on this, and I hope that this is going to be the last person. I'm going to be the last person to talk about this. Wait a minute. I'm saying it because I don't see sense in what we are discussing, because it's wrong. And therefore, I support whoever brought the motion. I was not in the House, but I support whoever brought in the motion. And I look forward to His Excellency making a comment on the same and condemning whatever said that we can, that somebody's right to do whatever he wants to do, like my colleague has just said. You get out of the House. No, I didn't say anything. I was simply saying you're a good friend.
Honorable,
I support.
Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi is making these passionate presentations with the wisdom of the past. Honorable Joshua Kimilu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the matter on the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission being legalized as an NGO. Mr. Speaker, as permitted by the Supreme Court of Kenya ruling on February 24th, 2023, Mr. Speaker, while the court ruling has opened the door for registration of this organization, it is important to note that the decision has sparked public outrage, and understandably so. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is not even issue. As Kenyans, we need to listen, to sit down and listen about it, because it's against the law and against the culture and the values of our country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, our principles, norms, values, and practices have never been anchored on and defined and characterized sexual orientations, Mr. Speaker. The act of unnatural sex acts and association have been criminalized in the Penal Code, Chapter 63, Law of Kenya, and the Sexual Offense Act, number 3 of 2006, Mr. Speaker. Allowing this to happen, Mr. Speaker, to register with the gays and lesbian, it is a title set and unprecedented legal precedent, and we risk a floodgate of other groups and associations registering the similar reasons, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we go to the Bible, Mr. Speaker, God created man, and He saw it good to create a woman. So, Mr. Speaker, this is not something we need to support, and shame on our Supreme Court for making such a decision, Mr. Speaker. It is very bad for our generation, our young people, our school children, to watch when we are discussing such a thing which has been legalized by our Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, when you go to when you go in a supermarket, there is exit and there is entrance and exit. And once you try to enter through the exit, it is written, it is prohibited, Mr. Speaker. So I don't see how we can try to use our exit as an entrance, Mr. Speaker. It's against the law, and it's very bad, Mr. Speaker. And those who are trying to use our weak institution to impose everything in this country, Mr. Speaker, we are going against them, and we are not supporting, Mr. Speaker. We are not going to be ruined our culture by the West. We are not going to support them. If they cannot give the donation to Kenyans with this condition, let them not give it to us, Mr. Speaker. We can stay without it, Mr. Speaker. Because how can a country like Kenya, a Christian country, indulge in such an act, Mr. Speaker? And I want to urge all the preachers, bishops, church, to stand firm on this issue, Mr. Speaker. We need to condemn it, right, left, center, Mr. Speaker, because we need to take care of our coming generation. We have to take care of our children. We are parents. I'm trying to imagine sitting in a sitting room, watching the TV, such a act. Mr. Speaker, this is against the law. I cannot allow it, Mr. Speaker. So I urge this parliament to stand firm and to make sure this thing is not legalized in our country and is stopped completely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support Honorable Mwadio for coming up with such a motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Engineer Paul Nzengu, MP for Mwingi North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also raise to congratulate Honorable Pastor Mwalio for bringing up this motion, and from the onset, I completely support the motion. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the ruling by the Supreme Court to allow the registration of this organization is the beginning of the killing of our society. Because I cannot imagine a society where a woman is marrying a woman and a man is marrying a man, and for that matter, you do not expect any product out of it. I have read from the media that President Museveni has actually put some homosexuals in jail for a known period of time until when they are able to produce children. And I can tell you that that is going to be an eternity. And therefore, when you look at it, when a man starts marrying a man, then it means that we are going to have a society where there is no procreation. And in that regard, that it means that our society, Kenya, is going to disappear after a certain time. And I think this is a making of the Western and probably the Eastern as well, because most of these people who are giving us money for donations to do development are putting conditions because they're interested in our land. They see that the population of Africa is still not that high, and they want to decimate the population of Africa so that they can take it over from us. And therefore, I want to agree with the President Museveni when he said that he is not going to take any money and they can take him wherever they want to take him. But he is not going to agree to receive donations for accepting to legalize gay and homosexuality. And also I agree with the President Biden, the president of the most powerful country in the world. He pronounced himself on this matter. And he said that he told men that you can never be women. You do not have a womb, you do not have ovaries, and you do not have any organ that supports you to become a woman. And for that matter, it will be a shame and for your parents, because after some time, you of course grow old, feel frustrated, and probably you hang yourself, like the president said. And then after hanging, it will not change. Where the tomb where you'll be buried, it will be written your name. If you are a man's name like Paul Nzengu, it will be written there, Paul Nzengu is the one buried here. It will not change to be a woman. So I just want to advise our society, the young people, because this is mostly being carried on by young people, that you are becoming a disappointment to your parents. And I think it is a high time that we advise the young people that this is an immoral behavior, it is a moral decay, and therefore we want them to refrain from that. And maybe it's because of misinformation. I therefore want to ask church to take leadership in this matter, and let's warn young people from the highest level of the podiums or in the churches and everywhere in the mosques, so that we discourage our young people from really being dragged into this. And I want to say that I want to ask the president of this country, because the president himself has pronounced himself as a serious Christian, that if Museveni, who has not even been pronouncing himself as a Christian, has refused to bow to the pressure of the Western, then let Kenya not accept any monies or donations that are tied to a condition of legalizing homosexuality against him, and let us pay taxes for that matter. If we must then run our country, we should not run it using dirty money that is conditioned for us to allow homosexuality engagement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable James Nyikal, MP for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the decision in court is actually the issue. It's not even about discrimination against these people. It's forming an organization. And when you form an organization, an NGO, it means you want actually propagate that. So if you do it quietly in your home, who has said there's no discrimination about that? So if you look at this thing, whichever way you look at it, even if you look at it biologically, really, this is something that we should not propagate. People who find themselves there and accept it can do it in the privacy of their homes. And I think that's where it ends. Because in reality, Mr. Speaker, on this universe, in this universe on the earth, all physical things, living and not living, have their own properties, their own forces that determine their existence and the powers that regulate that. Interference by human beings to change that actually leads to destruction. And therefore, all those physical forces, all those factors of nature, if you're a Christian, you will say God. And all religions will also accept a greater being, a super being, and they attribute all those forces to that. If you're an atheist, you will say nature. And we all know that if you disobey nature, you actually will be extinct. What is the whole purpose of mating? We can call it sex because we add feelings to it, but it's basically mating. It is for procreation. There is no other purpose for it. So if you promote a mating that actually does not lead to procreation, eventually in the end that is destructive. And I don't see why we should pursue that. And therefore that ruling was actually giving provision for propagating it. Because you cannot say register an organization. The object of any group is to promote what they do. And I think that is where they are. So these laws of nature, these laws of God, are then what human beings, we then incorporate in our morals, in our cultures, and in our religion, and should also be in our laws. That's what we do. And in all cases, you look at our cultures, they reject this. You look at our religions, they reject this. Even our laws, as it is, reject this. The Constitution is clear about marriage, man and woman. Culture is accepted in our Constitution. Our laws are unnatural sex is illegal. So what is the argument? I cannot understand, I'm not a lawyer, the argument of discrimination when people want to propagate something which is not acceptable to all. I think our rights stop where other people's rights also begin. So in this case, I don't see what the discrimination was about. So I don't think there's any discrimination, and the lawyers that actually, the judges that passed this, in my view, I do not agree with them. Really, in life, it is those laws of nature, even when, however educated we are, professions, law, engineering, all these things, what they're studying are the laws of nature by which we live. We cannot defy these laws. Mr. Speaker, just let me just one thing. Have we not even observed the body of a male and the body of a female. They are different. The breasts, as much as we are probably sexualized the breasts, the main thing about it is actually the feeding of the babies. You look at the hips. We all look at ladies when they have big hips. What is it all about? It's a big pelvis that is for easy delivery. So we now want to actually, that is all. God is so smart that what we admire must promote babies.
Give Dr. Nyikal, because of special expertise, 1 more minute.
Well, I think if that is what you want, I can go a little bit. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, if you look at ladies, what we admire most is probably the busts and the hips. And if you look at it, what are the breasts for? For the survival of a baby. Big hips mean a lady has big pelvis and is likely to give birth without problems. So everything in nature, in terms of mating, is about procreation. Leave it at that, Mr. Speaker. I do not agree with the decision of these judges.
The Honorable Mboko Milemba, MP for Mwaya.
No, I come to Parliament very early. Take care of myself. And in fact, I want to caution some of the new members who imagine that we speak simply because we are here. I would come very early, I would feed in my card. And that's exactly what I do. And you'll still see me, even in the previous Parliament, I sat there. And that's what I was. And I still continue being that. So just be early in the House. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution is supreme. And in its Article 1, it says that all the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. But 2 is very important, Honorable Speaker, that the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through democratically elected representatives. That is where I will begin and end. That the Supreme Court judgment, if it is not in line with this Article 1 and 2, then it's null and void. And be that as it may, I hear the voices from members who have spoken here, the media, the clergy, and other people in this country pronouncing themselves on this. This then indicts the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has taken a direction, Honorable Speaker, that is dangerous for itself. Because being the Supreme Court, it should be highly respected and revered. But the fact that this alone can make the people rise and go and even block it, question it, it means that it has taken a very wrong trajectory because it's not resonating with the people of Kenya and is likely to lose its authority as the Supreme Court of this country. And therefore, a word of caution to the Supreme Court, that any time they are making the laws, they must make the laws as per the Constitution. So then, Honorable Speaker, let me refer you back to our penal code. Interestingly, being a teacher of history, the penal code was brought in this country by the British when they colonized us. And they brought it in 1930, to be specific. And it was adopted in the Kenyan laws and has not been changed. In fact, later on in my speak, I will be quoting Justice Ouko, who quoted it, that in its section 62, it criminalizes carnal knowledge against the order of nature, with a penalty of 14 years imprisonment. This provision is applicable to sexual intercourse between men. Section 63 prohibits attempts to commit the offenses criminalized under Section 62, with a penalty of 7 years or above. This penal code, which we are referring to, was brought by the British law in 1930. They are the ones who brought it. So if anybody is quoting laws, imagining that there are some foreign laws and other laws that are just African, no, this was a British law in 1930. Honorable Speaker, when this matter began in the lower courts, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, all those courts, the lower courts, refused to register this organization because they quoted the penal code. They said we cannot register an organization that will propagate the interests that are against the law. Because there had been, Honorable Speaker, several attempts to challenge the penal code. But however, none of them have been successful. And you'll find in this judgment, I'm holding the judgment, Justice Ouko questioning the fact that he cannot support this matter because already it dissents because it's against the penal code. The judges who went ahead to register this thing did references, Honorable Speaker. One of their references was all European countries except Botswana, where you know where King Mswati can do what Mswati can do. But none of the other references they went to was an African state. I want to say, so that I don't even take extra time, that this is a wrong judgment and we shall indict the Supreme Court. And if possible, we as members of parliament and leaders of the people could organize demonstrations.
We have Honorable Julius Olesunkuli, MP for Kilgoris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I stand in support. And Mr. Speaker, I was reading a book called Giovanni's Room, which was written in 1958. And what surprises me about that book, Mr. Speaker, is that even as early as that, homosexuality was already a problem in the West. The only good thing about it is that at that time, the writers considered homosexuality as a disease, as a problem. And when you look at the way this disease has been spreading in the West, I am tempted to borrow the words of Sir Michael Blundell when he said, "So rough a wind." There is a wind, Mr. Speaker, that is blowing, and it is so rough a wind. There is a temptation by one culture to come and dominate other cultures.
Honorable Dr. Lillian Gogo going out. She's supposed to be the next to speak.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, that this so rough a wind that is blowing, if you know what is going on in our schools, if you know what is going on in secrecy in this country, the whole thing about homosexuality is actually on the rise. And we have to be alert as institutions of Kenya. And I want to request the Supreme Court of Kenya to always remember that they are the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. And they must be like us. They must think like us. In the first place, this country, between the Christians and the Muslims, we are 93%. If you might differ a bit on the mathematics, the Christians being 63% and 30% being the Muslims. And each of those dominant religions believe that sex be conducted in accordance with the order of nature. Regardless of whether what my learned friend, what my honorable friend Karoli says is trying to understand how, be sympathetic about how people behave. The truth is that our religions, and I am a Roman Catholic, do not believe that this is the way to go. But more important is that we are Africans. And gentlemen and ladies, honorable members, let us not behave like the word values have lost value. there must be value in values. So what do we stand for, we here who are black Africans? It has never been in our nature to behave the way the Supreme Court wants to persuade us to behave. We must stand, if nothing else, tall and strong because of our culture. I don't know myself how it actually works, how this thing called homosexuality works. I know that under the penal code, men are not supposed to have sex with men. I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, because you are also a lawyer, it does not even think about women having sex with each other. That is not even contemplated. I think it was a very distant idea. So, if we want to survive as Africans and not go through the slippery road that the West has gone through, we have to preserve our culture. The numbers in the West are reducing because they are propagating something, they are promoting something called queer. How do you even promote something called queer? Mr. Speaker, the preservation of our dignity, the preservation of our faiths, the preservation of our religions, and the future of our children demands that we say no to this trend that is being developed. I support.
The Honorable Dr. Lillian Gogo, the MP for Rangwe.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I was running some little fever, and I was almost giving up on my position. But thank you for giving me this chance to add my voice to the foregoing motion. I want to thank the Honorable Member who brought it to the floor of the House. We have had many court rulings that are questionable in the recent past, Honorable Speaker. And among them, there was recent, other than the one on LGBTQ, is the idea that upon divorce, then people or couples should have their matrimonial property divided according to how they made contribution to that property. And I was left asking, if we all pursue property as man and wife, then who takes care of the children? It is the women going for property, the men also going for property, because they don't know what happens tomorrow, and the children are left on their own, Honorable Speaker. The kind of court system, the judicial system that we have in this country is adversarial. It is adversarial to the extent that we have a litigation that is undertaken before an impartial judge who is presumed blind, deaf, and also dumb. And we have parties present their case, and depending on how they argue out their case, a decision is made by the bench. I wonder if we were ever friends of the court in this matter as members of the National Assembly or any of our representatives. Once the matter has been passed, Honorable Speaker, we are here condemning the matter and saying that the judges did this and this. You realize that there is separation of powers. We, as the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker, must make laws, and the judiciary must mediate upon disputes and also make their own judgments. Have we failed as a House? That is a question that should also rule as we debate on this matter. Honorable Speaker, it is despicable that we are having and breeding a society where there is no direction upon our children, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when was the last time you told your son on how to behave where there is a girl? Honorable Speaker, when was the last time I told my daughter how to behave where there is a boy? We are busy looking for money. We are busy doing our own businesses. We are busy studying and leaving our children to technology, buying them the most expensive phones, and they go to sites that attract them. They go to sites, Honorable Speaker, where they see men marrying men and women marrying women women kissing women, and men kissing men. And there are people who are enticing these young people, Honorable Speaker, to engage in this kind of activities. Where is the role of the family in socializing our own children? Honorable Speaker, before we castigate the courts, what are we doing as a parliament? Honorable Speaker, in my language, they say, and I quote, "I blame Ogwang, ti blame Nyakagweno." For that I mean, when the chicken leaves its, they call the chicklings or whatever, the chicks, and they are taken away, it is asked, why did you leave your chicks to be taken? Honorable Speaker, the divorce rate in this country is too much. Where do we leave our children? Who teaches our children? Honorable Speaker, we have people who are ready to sponsor these young men into these activities. Homosexuality is so rampant in our secondary schools, Honorable Speaker. Do we have people who go to teach our children against this thing in secondary schools? Do we have people who openly talk about gay and lesbian relationships in our secondary schools where we have our teenagers, and we are here castigating the courts? Honorable
30 seconds only.
30 seconds. This is what I say. We have failed as a society, Honorable Speaker. And on this matter, we need to come out and educate our children. We need to come out and be there for our children. We need to come out and just tell these people who are encouraging our children into bad manners to get out of Kenya and go back to their countries. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Lillian Gogo. The Honorable Kaindi Katana, the MP for Kaloleni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I want to join my colleagues in condemning the ruling of the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, we as Africans, we have our African and cultural values, which the Western and the Americans must respect. This country is guided by the rule of law and the Constitution. The Supreme Court contradicted itself by saying that homosexual is not allowed in our country as per the Constitution. Then how come that the same judges are now saying the gays, the homosexual, lesbian, they have a right? What a contradiction. The Supreme Court judges must apologize to Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid this House is slowly losing its authority to the judiciary through the back door. So this House must stamp its authority. I'm a Catholic by faith. I know the teachings that homosexual is not allowed. Both the Bible and the Quran pronounce itself that marriage is for a man and a woman. Mr. Speaker, what feelings would I have for another man? This is the cleverest way by the West and the Americans to reduce the population in Africa, and Kenya is a target. Mr. Speaker, there is a conference going on in Belgium, and we have Kenyan delegation. I had the privilege in January. I was in Arizona through the invitation of the Family Watch International. One of the clauses in the so-called trade is that we should embrace comprehensive sexual education for us to get aid. This is the second colonization by the West. If we have to embrace homosexual for us to get aid, then we don't need it in Kenya. And I'm calling upon our president, who is a Christian and a family man, to address the nation on the issues of LGBTQs. And I'm calling upon all Kenyans, from the political divide or religious divide. We have to come together and condemn these activities. You saw what happened in Kisii. Young children are being asked on how to do homosexual. And these people, they're here. They have penetrated everywhere, all the institutions of this country. And there's a lot of money which is flowing. They have the agents in this country. Mr. Speaker, we should be allowed to practice what is good for us. We should not be dictated by the West, and particularly the Americans. Let them stay with their bad behaviors where they are and leave us. But they should not colonize us or should not give us aid with the conditions. Look at a scenario. If my mom was married to another woman, or my dad was married to another man, could I be here? So, what are they telling us? Even the animals, they're not attracted to a female or a female. So why are they trying our living God? Because God created a man and a woman. So we should condemn these acts, and we should come together. We should not blame anybody, but we should come together and say, no, enough is enough. If it's aid from the West or the US, let them stay with their aid. We don't need it, but let them leave us with African values and Christian values. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Katana, the Honorable Caroline Ngelechei, let the voice of Elgeyo Marakwet be heard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Caroline Ngelechei is a Catholic, and as we all know, we are in the period of Lent. This is a period whereby Christian religious observe in the liturgical year commemorating the 40 days Jesus Christ spent fasting in the desert and enduring temptation. I think this is the temptation of our time. Mr. Speaker, it is a period for Christians and even Muslims to reflect on ecological sins and fast from habits that hurt nature. This is one of the habits that hurts nature, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to contribute to what Mr. Mwalio is against. Mr. Speaker, at times, when you hear things being pronounced here and there, I think at times in Africa we should, or specifically Kenya, we should be very choosy and decide to choose our problems. We have so many problems that are affecting us. We have so many problems that we should be spending time in this house discussing, rather than the so-called LGBTQ or whatever. Mr. Speaker, we don't need to add problems on top of problems. This thing is becoming a problem. Mr. Speaker, if you can imagine of a generation whereby men will be working alongside men. And Mr. Speaker, one thing that keeps me asking myself is, why do these people who decide to unite as men and women change their ways? Or you find a man who has decided to be married to another man, start pretending to be a woman. They put on earrings. At times they put on, I don't know, diapers to look like women. They inject some hormones. Why don't you just stand with your suit and walk with another man with a suit, so that we know you are proud of whatever you're doing? Mr. Speaker, I think it is about time we call out on these people that they should be sure of what they want and keep of. Freedom of expression or freedom of whatever somebody wants to do should not also affect freedom of somebody else who does not want to do it, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is sad to imagine, you know, Africans, or we were told to live our traditions. One of them was polygamy. So they started telling us, be jealous and don't share men with other women. But then these people, Mr. Speaker, are sharing men with objects or whatever gadgets they use to facilitate their whole affair. Because I believe if you start doing unnatural things, you must modify some parts of your body, or you must bring in gadgets to help you achieve whatever was supposed to be achieved naturally, Mr. Speaker. So the whole thing is ill-informed, because you cannot tell a human being to resist sharing another human being, and then you tell them it is right to use an object to share. You know, already those people are in polygamous relationship, because for you to satisfy another man and you don't have whatever it takes, you have to involve a gadget or an object. So you are already in a polygamous relationship, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if you ask me, we have better things to do. And Mr. Speaker, if we must embrace this whole thing, we can make money out of it. Let us start companies to manufacture the gadgets in the EPZ and take it to them, those who want to use it. Mr. Speaker, we have enough natural gadgets around us and we can utilize them. Those in need of them, we can do a factory in EPZ, we do the necessary, and then we take them to wherever they need it. But as around here, I think, Mr. Speaker, third thing should not be something to be discussed. Mr. Speaker, a while, sometimes, I think it was 3 years ago, the Chinese manufactured something called Samantha. And the women were so jealous with that Samantha thing, because it was giving us an unfair competition. Because it was used. Sorry, Mr. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. You know, we are human beings. We are not meant to compete with objects. Samantha was using electricity. I am using blood and flesh. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to categorically support, and because the
30 seconds, because you took a bit of time laughing at Samantha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole affair, to me, is hot air, because already we know that our Constitution outlaws sexual acts between consenting adults. But at the same time, you are allowing something which is outlawed you are allowing them to form association. So, Mr. Speaker, I can call it hot air, and it shouldn't be either here nor there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Oscar Nabulindo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to also express myself on this motion of adjournment brought by Honorable Mwalyo. First, I take this opportunity to join hands with my colleagues who have strongly condemned the Supreme Court ruling about this issue that is burning the nation. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is a very, very religious country. And since that ruling was made, debate has been going on around this country about our beliefs. This is Africa, and in Africa we have values, norms, and traditions that we subscribe to. And so this ruling has actually gone against the values, norms, and traditions that we believe in Africa. Mr. Speaker, sir, this ruling is actually giving very bad precedents to this country, because so many other groups are going to come up and it's going to be chaotic in this country. For example, we have these very many groups which believe in fantasies and fetishes, like there are those who subscribe in bestiality. They are also going to say they want their right to associate. We have the necrophilias. They are also going to say they want rights to associate. We have pedophiles. They also want rights to associate. So if such rulings are made in this country, then this president is going to make very complicated decisions in future for this country. Mr. Speaker, we should be careful as a country of what we adopt from the Western countries. In Western countries, they have their own beliefs, they have their own norms, and they have their own traditions if they have. And so by just copying because we are seeing things on the internet without considering what the majority of people feel is actually wrong. And of late, the Supreme Court has been making very controversial rulings that do not actually go hand in hand with the beliefs of the many Kenyans. And I wonder why that is happening in this country, where the Supreme Court is always ruling against the thoughts and ideas of the majority of Kenyans. If this debate, even in this House, almost 100% of the members of the House are opposed to that kind of ruling. So it means the whole country, and this represents the people. It means 90%, 99% of the country do not subscribe to that kind of behavior. So why are they ruling? On whose favor are they ruling? So, Mr. Speaker, is it a coincidence that the First Lady of America was here and 2 days later a ruling was made, and then 1 day later Kenya was promised to receive 16 billion shillings? Is it a coincidence, or is it something that was planned well by the government and the Supreme Court and the Western country where the First Lady came from? That's America. Mr. Speaker, there's so much that we can talk about this issue, but I can see the red light is on, and I'll give other members time.
The Honorable Rashid Bedzimba, MP Kisauni.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kuniruhusu niweze kupenyeza sauti yangu kwa swala hili. Nitakwenda kwa haraka kwa sababu ya muda na wengine pia wapate nafasi ya kuchangia. Kwa kweli Mheshimiwa Spika, inasikitisha sana Mahakama Kuu kuidhinisha kusajiliwa kwa vyama hivi vya usagaji na ushoga. Yaani kwa njia nyingine inaitwa uhanisi. Mimi nitawahusia majaji hao kwamba wamche Mwenyezi Mungu. Hapa duniani tumekuja kulima shamba ambalo matunda yake tutayapata huko mbele. Kwa hivyo lolote wanalolifanya hivi sasa, maamuzi yote wanayotoa hivi sasa, watakutana nao mbele ya hera, ambao wote wataondoka katika ulimwengu huu. Hakuna mtu atabaki. Na pia wao wajue kwamba wataweka kumbukumbu za vizazi vilioko na vitakavyokuja kulingana na maamuzi yao hayo ambayo wanayafanya hapa. Nchi hii ni ya watu wanaoabudu Mungu. Leo tunalazimishwa kuabudu shetani. Ikiwa saa hii tunaabudu Mungu na ukame ndio huu, je, huko tunakoelekea si kutatokea maafa ambayo hatutayaweza sisi? Mila na maadili zetu za Kiafrika haituruhusu kushangilia utovu huu wa nidhamu. Ushoga haukubaliki Kiafrika, haukubaliki na dini zote. Kwa kweli nchi za magharibi zinatumia umaskini wetu kutulazimisha mambo ambayo wanataka wao. Tusiwakubalie, tuje pamoja kama taifa tukemee. Dini zote zisimame kuelimisha waumini wao kuwa njia hii ni ya shetani. Tusikubali kuelekea kule waliko wao. Wametufundisha kutembea uchi, wengine wakaigiza, sasa wanataka kutungiza kwa shimo, sasa walete ushoga ushoga, mwisho hata kwenye jumba kama hili la kitaifa la kutunga sheria, ikiwa mtakubali kutakuja spika mmoja awe jishoga linkaa pale linjipaga rangi ya mdomo, hapa utakuwa sasa ndio tushamaliza kabisa taifa zima. Tusimame imara, tupinge hili jambo. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Geoffrey Ruku, the MP from Mbeere North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I use the front? This thing, I'm tall, Mr. Speaker.
It's gone. You have 3 minutes only.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support and at the same time to question a number of issues. One, when I am a Catholic, Mr. Speaker, and when the Pope made the statement on the issue to do with homosexuality or the gay, you wonder, Mr. Speaker, whether the interpretation of the Leviticus chapter 20 verses 13 is exactly what we are understanding as Christians. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we saw the Church of England giving the mandate for the clergy to ceremonize marriages of the same sex. So you see, the church, or what we may call the body Christi, is reading from the different scripts, or the body Christ is not in unity, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's high time for the church to call a synod of bishops so that the bishops of the Western world and the bishops of the African countries can be able to speak with one voice. Because the bishops in Rome, they are telling us that homosexuality is not a crime. The bishops in African countries are telling us we should not even think about homosexuality. Number two, Mr. Speaker, is that as parents we are supposed to raise our children without the Supreme Court telling us that our children have the right to engage in issues to do with gay and lesbian and such kind of issues. So I rise to support the motion that this thing should be condemned with the strongest terms possible in our nation. But the church should be in a position to speak in one voice because it's a universal church. We don't have an African church, American church, and the Church of Europe. Church is one. They should be in a position to speak in one voice.
Honorable Andrew Okuome, Adipo MP for Karachuonyo, for 3 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it's strange that I'm talking or I'm given opportunity to talk about what I hate, because our culture certainly does not allow us even to discuss, leave alone consider. It is a taboo to think of a man marrying a man. It is against our culture. Mr. Speaker, I'm just wondering about a situation where your neighbor, a man like you, comes up with another man and introduces that man to you as his wife. Surely you will think this man has gone mad. He's not working in brain. If you look at our culture and compare it with the Europeans one, or rather, or the American one, surely, Mr. Speaker, I tell you, our culture is rich and they admire it. A number of times when they visit Kenya, they tell you clearly that they admire our culture. But they want to erode it from another side, coming up with marriage issue. So in terms of our culture, I say a very firm no And this case has come to us not to consider, but in my opinion, it has come to us to condemn. And we should be one thing in condemning this, let me call it suggestion, because it will not even be a motion. I don't know how we discuss it, if it is. Now, moving away from culture, let me talk about our religious inclination. We have two major religions in Kenya, the Christianity and the Muslim. I've heard my colleague who is a Muslim speaking, and I'm sure if you ask him to speak more, he will tell you that sex by people of the same gender is a taboo. A similar thing applies to Christianity as well. The Bible condemns it. Culture condemns this thing we are talking about. So where is our entry point? I think what we have is just one unifying voice. Let us condemn this, and I therefore don't have any favorable word, even one word, positive, I don't have for this suggestion. I call it so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see the time is against me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Moses Kirima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion as it relates to the existing discussion before the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, my aim is to say that this motion is timely because it deals with the real core of the family values. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court went beyond what it's supposed to do because it undermines itself. It has shown that it lacks integrity because it shouldn't be a custodian of our culture. It shouldn't be a custodian of our, what we call tenets of the society, or what unites Kenya. If you look at it clearly, it goes even against the Constitution. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you will allow me to quote the Constitution, if you look at Article 55, Article D, Article 55, yes, Article 55D says that, Mr. Speaker, that the youth, the state shall take measures including affirmative action programs to ensure that the youth are protected from harmful culture, practices, and exploitation. If you look at the culture which is now being introduced to us through the Supreme Court, that culture is going to be harmful against our youth because that culture is going to make sure that the youth do not become future mothers and future fathers of tomorrow. Because if we registrate or we recognize this group, the lesbians and gays, it means clearly that it's against our culture, and that's against the Constitution. As it is said that the Constitution is the supreme law of this country, this parliament is the representative of the people of Kenya. And this parliament today is saying that what the ruling of the High Court, the ruling of the Supreme Court, is obnoxious, is against the dictates of the African culture. It should be dealt away with. What surprises me is to
Thank you, Honorable Kirima. The Honorable Kuria Kimani, the MP for Molo.
Nashukuru sana mstahiki Spika kwa kunipa muda huu wa kuweka mawazo yangu katika huu mjadala. Mstahiki Spika, huu uamuzi ambao umefanywa na mahakama kuu ama inaitwa kwa kimombo Supreme Court. Nilikuwa najiuliza wale ambao waliandika katiba yetu walitupa mikono mitatu ya serikali. Wakatupa ile tunaita executive, wakatupa bunge na wakatupa makoti ama judiciary. bunge, wakati tunaenda kupitisha kipengele chochote cha sheria, baada ya sisi kupitisha hapa, lazima hicho kipengele kiende kwa Mheshimiwa Rais ili aweze kutia sahihi, ndio hicho kipengele kipate kuwa sheria. Na kama Mheshimiwa Rais anadhani ya kwamba kwa vyovyote vile kwamba hiyo sheria haifai, anaweza kurudisha kwa bunge ili bunge iweze kufikiria tena kuhusu hilo swala. Na hata baada ya Mheshimiwa Rais kusema kwamba hiyo sheria iko sawa na ametia sahihi na imekuwa sheria, basi kuna Mkenya yote anaweza enda kotini na kufanya huo uamuzi wa hiyo sheria iweze kuwekwa kando. Tunapoangalia vile executive inafanya kazi yake, mstahiki Speaker, lazima wakuje hapa bunge waombe bajeti, na hata baada ya hiyo, hata wakijaribu kutumia kama kile kipengele cha sheria cha 223, basi sisi tunao jukumu ya hata kukataa yale maamuzi ambao executive imefanya. Lakini ifikapo kwa makoti zetu, wakati jambo limepita katika ile koti ya chini, imefika kwa High Court, imefika sasa kwa Supreme Court, na Supreme Court inaweza kufanya decision ama kufanya uamuzi kama huu ambao kabisa hauendani na maadili ya kijamii, sisi kama Wakenya tunafaa kufanya nini? Na nafikiri ni jambo ambalo hii bunge tunafaa kujadili. Nilikuwa naangalia kwa sababu sio hii peke yake. Mheshimiwa Gogo aliongea kuhusu ile sheria nyingine ambao walipitisha, mambo ya ugawaji wa mali katika ndoa, na kama imefanywa na Supreme Court, basi mtu kama anadhani kwamba hiyo ni juu ya ama sio vizuri kulingana na katiba yetu, mtu anafaa kwenda kutafuta suluhu wapi? Na nafikiri nikiangalia haya maswala yote ni jambo ambalo tunafijidi tufikirie kama nyumba, kwa sababu tunaweza kuwa na majaji wa Supreme Court ambao watatupa sheria ama kufanya uamuzi ambao kabisa utaharibu uchumi wetu na utaharibu nchi yetu ya Kenya. Na nashukuru Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Asante sana. Mheshimiwa Gonzi Rai, mjumbe wa Kinago.
Mheshimiwa Spika, ninashukuru kwa sababu ya kunipa nafasi hii, na kwa haraka kwanza ningetaka nilaani vilivyo sheria iliyotolewa ama uamuzi uliotolewa na Mahakama Kuu, kwa sababu hiki ndiyo chanzo cha upotofu wa jamii. Mheshimiwa Spika, mwanadamu alipokuja katika huu ulimwengu alipewa vitabu viwili, Biblia na Qur'an. Mwanadamu akaja akajiongezea katiba. Sasa angalia kile kilichotengenezwa na mwanadamu kimekosa kuheshimiwa mpaka imefika mahali tunapelekwa ambako siko. Fikiria Bwana Spika, utoke hapo ukifika nyumbani, mtoto wako anakuja na mwaliko wa kusema Jumamosi nataka kuolewa na mume mwenzangu. Utawaambia nini wajumbe wenzako ukifika hapa? Ni jambo la aibu sana. Kwa hivyo tulani vilivyo, na nilikuwa namuuliza Mheshimiwa Bezimba, Ijumaa ni siku ya maombi. Tuziulize misikiti yetu na makanisa, tufanye kunguti juu ya hawa majaji. Mungu apate kuwapa majibu, kwa sababu huku ni kutaka kutumaliza kwa njia nyingine ya mlango wa nyuma. Hapa tumefika mwisho wa utengenezaji wa sheria, na kama kutakuja kitengo chengine, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri sasa tutachukua kitengo cha dini kupambana na hawa watu, na watauona mwisho wao, kwa sababu labda penginepo hawajajijua mahali walipo. Tuwaulize ni wa dhehebu gani. Asante Bwana Spika.
Mjumbe Robert Basil, mwakilishi wa Yata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start by thanking my brother for bringing this motion. I also condemn strongly the ruling of the Supreme Court, which was ill-advised or in bad faith. We should not be talking of homosexuality. We should be talking of food insecurity, increased cost of living, or drought. Issues of drought. The issue on the subject matter defeats the principle of procreation and is against our values or traditions. From a medical front, even gays have more risk of getting HIV and AIDS. So I fully condemn this, and we need to remain strong and be against the vice. When it comes to discrimination, we should not discriminate gays, lesbians based on their sexual orientation. So that is what I thought I should bring on board, because we condemn the vice. But when it comes to employment and other issues, we should not discriminate them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable John Makali, MP for Kandui, Senior Counsel.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on this motion. First, I wish to state, Honorable Speaker, that I will want to side with the minority in the Supreme Court. Side with the minority in the sense that homosexuality, gayism are not African concepts at all. And the Supreme Court, in the discharge of its functions, it speaks for the people of Kenya. It derives its authority from the people of Kenya. None of those concepts are African traditions. And as a House of Representatives, we must condemn in the strongest terms the judgment of the Supreme Court. Why do I say that? Of late, and when the Constitution of Kenya was being created, the Supreme Court was created as the apex court that would ooze judicial wisdom. But of late, Honorable Speaker, we are witnessing a lot of judgments from the Supreme Court that really leave Kenyans wondering as to whether that court really is in sync with the people of Kenya or not. Article 45 of the Constitution of Kenya recognizes the family as the basic unit of social protection and social order in our society. And it goes forth to say that a person has a right to form up a family with a member of the opposite gender, of the opposite sex, by the Supreme Court recognizing or stating that gays, lesbians are free to form up associations. It was, in fact, going against the very provisions of the Constitution with which it's supposed to enforce. Because no right is absolute. All rights are limited. And when you look at the provisions of Article 27 of the Constitution of
Honorable Beatrice Kemei, mjumbe wa Kericho.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak to the motion that we have about the impact of LGBTQ
الأقدام للحظة التاريخية في البلاد. فنية الحدث التاريخي تأسيس البلاد في مطار وننقل ننتقل بكم نحو القصر الرئاسي
Okay? Yeah, please. All right? Yeah. Yeah. Mariam? Oh, let's go that. Come here. Come ورا معلم هناك ورا. معلم ورا هناك. معلم ورا هناك. رجعوا ورا. ما يخشوا العمك هناك. رجعوا ورا. Please. رجعوا ورا هناك.
Okay. When you come outside, I will allow you. Stop. I will allow you to come. Yes. When you come outside, I will tell you. Yes, when you come inside, let you come for one line. Huh? Check for yeah. Yes, but now it's the share. Go, come there, come here. One side, those coming. The cows coming. My friend, you go inside. Raja, listen, go back, my friend. Go back, my friend. Bejai, my friend.
No problem. Just move. No, President is the one moving. Just please,
My friend.
Go back. You
Go that side.
Yeah, go one side. One side. Jump, show you, show you. This Scott is going to move here. Going to move this side here. Okay, just please. Just go a little bit like that. Leader, show you. Go this side. Yes. Come this side. Friend, Leave this side, man. Friend. Friend. Come this side. You can come like this. Okay. Let's take a photo. It's okay.
We already missed it.
Now when the prison boy, let you be here. Go up.
Order, his face. Move behind. His face, move. Convoy. Wait, convoy. Don't come to the road. Yes. Go behind, please. You can't even take it when you're behind there.
Like this.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Don't move. Huh? No, don't move.
Those guys at the front. Those guys are blocking. No. Like this is okay. Just here. Don't go there. No, not quite. Kida quite. No. Kida not quite. Those two. Abuna na kabuno yet.
Thank you.
Arabia bawara kaman, Arabia fitali bawara ina.
Why are you people making our life?
Arabia tali bawara ina kaman.
Ask him to stop now.
Oh shit, this guy is going to cover Minnesota. Where is he going?
That's all. All right. Stay.
Guys,
يلا ورا خلاص خلاص
Okay, go back, my friend. Go back.
Of around $500,000 US to support health, educational and agricultural projects in the country. South Sudanese civil and
Live.
نتجه نحو هذه اللحظة التاريخية. والآن مشاهدينا الكرام عدد كبير من الجمهور اصطف جنبات الطرقات الرئيسية مدينة جوبا. Thank you viewers for following SBC. You can see all the plaque right here. Thank you so much for following SBC. This is the possessions of our
Grace. Let them reduce at least here. Huh? Let them reduce. Huh? Yeah. Motorbikes are there. Motorbikes are in front. Secretariat. Huh? Secretariat. Yeah, not in Japan. Really? Yeah. Yeah.
الجمهورية حيث سيلتقي الحكومة هناك وبعض ورجالات الكنيسة في جنوب السودان. المشاهدون الأكارم، مرة أخرى نجدد الترحاب ونحن معكم عبر هذا النقل الحي المباشر. نتجه الآن لمكتب رئيس الجمهورية. في هذه الزيارة التاريخية لمدة 3 أيام من اليوم وغدا وبعد غدا سيكون هناك قداس راح دكتور جنجرن وبعد غد الأحد كذلك. إذا نحن وأنتم مشاهدين هذه اللقطات والمشاهدة للزيارة التاريخية لبابا فرانسيس الذي وصل الآن الضيوف الكرام. لتو الأمانة العام لرئاسة الجمهورية إذا مشاهدينا الكرام إذا مشاهدينا الكرام وصلنا لتو مكتب رئيس الجمهورية وسنكون معكم على الهواء مباشرة على مدار هذه 3 أيام لتغطية هذه الزيارة التاريخية. أعود إلى زميلي والزميل غوري أنطوني للتعليق مرة أخرى.
Yes, viewers of SSBC, we have just arrived at the State House where we're expecting to see His Holiness Pope Francis and the President of the Republic. They will be having a meeting, and from there we will see. And this is what is happening now. We just arrived from airport, and His Holiness has now just got into the main State House to actually meeting with the President of the Republic. Graduate from the airport after the presidential palace. Just right now here at the presidential palace where the event is taking place. Of course, this is a meeting of His Holiness Pope Francis during the Excellency the President he will be able to bless the beneficiaries and he has cut down the record with his thousands of people from all over the land all over the streets of Cuba, and of course we are just waiting. Vice President of the Republic with the religious leaders and the religious leaders here. We are talking about Pope Francis, who is the head of the Catholic, and we'll be having another guest who will also attend the meeting. That is none other than Reverend Justin Wemby of the Anglican Church, and we'll be having also Ian Chin, the moderator of the General Assembly of Church of Scotland. They are all here. They will be part of this meeting as they offer prayers and petitions to God, especially to the government officials, ranging from the President, the Vice-Presidents, all of them at the State House or at the Presidential Palace. As they will all waiting as soon as the prayers, as soon as the meeting is taking place at the palace, the meeting with President Salva Kiir and Pope Francis. Then we'll be having our all His Holiness Pope Francis. We will be moved to the tent. The tent you'll see where government officials are all seated, combined with the speaker, combined with the ministers, combined with religious leaders, as well as head of the diplomatic mission. These people, we are all there to ensure that the meeting is successful. You can see that viewers, this day marks a remarkable and unique day in the history of the Republic of South Sudan, as we see that people, we see people from different parts of this country, all came from the states and the areas. They are all here, and not only gathered in this city that is Cuba, the capital city, part of this day.
لا انت قصر ما بدي اسمع ها دقيقة دي اواز انا قاعد اقول الليلة ده بعد اكيد انا ما